Hey everybody, welcome to CCC's online service experience. I'm David Robinson, the senior minister here at Community Christian Church, and I sure hope you had a phenomenal Thanksgiving celebration. And I hope you were able to overflow with gratitude to God for His goodness and His graciousness in your life. I'm really grateful that you're spending part of your weekend tuning into CCC. These services are a significant piece of our connection with God. Well, today we're wrapping up a series we've been in called Life's Missing Ingredient. And I hope each and every week has been incredibly helpful for you. In fact, I hope each service at CCC is not only helpful, but deeply meaningful, and it turns out to be exactly what you need at this point in time in your life. It might just be the highlight of your week. As we get going today, listen to this terrific section from the Bible. It's really a charge given to us as we go about our faith. It's from the 3rd chapter of the book of Colossians. Check it out. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace. And be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, and as you sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs with gratitude in your heart to God. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him.
This is the day that you have made. Whatever comes, I won't complain. All my hope is in your name, and now your joy awaits my praise. I give thanks for all you have done, and I will sing of your mercy and your love. Your love is unfailing, Lord, I am grateful. When I was down, you brought me out and set my feet on higher ground. So here I stand, you are my God. Your faithfulness, my solid rock. I give thanks for all you have done, and I will sing of your mercy and your love. Your love is unfailing, Lord, I am grateful. I give thanks for all you have done. I won't forget all the battles you have won. Your love is unfailing, Lord, I am grateful.
Good morning and welcome again to Community Christian Church Online. My name is Nick Cox and I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving and you were able to spend time with friends and family and the people you love and that you were able to eat a ton of food and watch a ton of football. We've been in the midst of a series called Life's Missing Ingredient, where we've been looking at some of the essential ingredients of what it looks like to live a thrivingly healthy life. Like any good meal, if you're missing an ingredient, it changes everything. I've certainly had this happen before. Actually, it may have happened the other day on Thanksgiving. Maybe you had to make a last minute trip to the grocery store to grab some ingredient or other. And today we're going to take some time to talk about a key ingredient to a healthy life. It's gratitude, which of course fits this time of year, right? But if we don't get a significant portion of gratitude and thanksgiving in our lives, we'll shrivel up. We'll live these small, desiccated lives. But those people whose lives are characterized by thankfulness, whose lives are just huge in the amount of gratitude they express, many people live big old lives. Now, gratitude comes in all shapes and sizes, and I want to start talking about gratitude toward God. And I want to jump into a moment in the life of Jesus. If you have a Bible, we're going to jump into the book of Luke in chapter 17. This is what it reads. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into the village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourself to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." So let's unpack this a little. First of all, the setting of this story is somewhere between Samaria and Galilee. So somewhere between where the people were Jewish and Samaritans, which was a significant cultural and racial divide during the days of Jesus. And a group of lepers, they must have heard that Jesus was traveling through the area and they went out to meet him. Now, if you know anything about leprosy, you know how devastating it was during the time of Jesus. It required that people with leprosy leave their homes and their families and live these ostracized lives away from the rest of the world. And to add spiritual insult to injury, the Jewish leaders would often talk about leprosy as the fault of the person who was suffering, as an example of their sinfulness, that they were being punished by God. And you can tell how bad it was for these men because there was an intermixing between the Jews and the Samaritans. These groups that wouldn't interact with each other, much less live with together, but the disease that broke down the social barriers. The only people they could be with were each other. And so they stood at a distance and they called out to Jesus, which they were required to by law. They weren't allowed to approach anyone. And when Jesus saw them, he instructed them to go and to present themselves to the high priest, which was required by law for cleansing. And along the way, they discovered they were healed. And we don't know if this healing happened all at once, like in a flash, or if each step they were healed little by little. What we do know is that they became aware that they were no longer suffering the way they had. The very thing that they had hoped and dreamed for was true. They were healed. And one of the men, when he realized he was healed, he recognized that it was Jesus who had healed him. He turned around and he made his way back to Jesus to express his thankfulness and his gratitude. When he got back, he fell at Jesus' feet and he thanked him. "Where are the other 9?" Jesus says. "Weren't there 10 of you?" And not only that, but the one that returned wasn't Jewish, but a Samaritan. It was a foreigner. It's an interesting story of the life of Jesus. And I do think that it's easy to kind of stand on the outside of this story and to kind of judge the other 9 lepers who didn't come back to say thanks. I mean, what sort of ungrateful fools wouldn't take a little trip back to Jesus and say a simple thank you for, changing their entire lives? And I wonder why they didn't. The reality is we don't know what happened with the other 9. We aren't told, so we don't know, but I think we can make some good guesses because it turns out people are people. People in the days of Jesus and people now. And while I might not know exactly what happened to the 9 men in the story of Jesus, I certainly do know some of the reasons why we aren't thankful today. So let's wonder together about these 9 men who didn't return. Perhaps one of the reasons they didn't come back to express their gratitude is that they didn't associate this amazing thing that had happened to them, this incredible healing. Perhaps they didn't associate it to the work of God. I don't know if they just thought things got better on their own or if they associated it with some other cure they had attempted in the past, or maybe they just didn't realize that God was the one at work. Or maybe they were overwhelmed by the positive events in their lives and they were so busy enjoying the blessing that they lost sight of the source of their gift. Or maybe with the trip back to the temple and the process of presenting themselves to the priest, not to mention the reconnection with family and friends, maybe the busyness of life and the task to accomplish, maybe they just forgot. I think we have some of those very same struggles in our lives. Because the truth is that I don't think most people go out of their way to lack gratitude. I don't think, fundamentally speaking, that we want to be ungrateful people. I don't think we walk around intentionally trying to lack thankfulness or to take things for granted. I am willing to bet dollars to donuts that there is not a single person listening to me that woke up this morning and thought to themselves, you know what? I think I'm going to be entitled and unappreciative today. It's not how it works. Instead, I think we may have the same struggles as these lepers. I think there are three main states of being that can be an enemy to living a grateful and thankful life. And the three states that if we allow them to take root, it will choke out our ability to have significant amounts of thankfulness and gratitude. One of the ways that we can struggle in our lives is by being inattentive. We can miss out on this ingredient of gratitude in life if our life is so busy and so full and so distracted that we're just completely inattentive to the gifts and blessing around us. Even people who have faith in God, who identify as followers of Jesus, people who honestly pray to God about their lives, can become distracted and inattentive to the blessings of God. How attentive are we? How often do we intentionally take time, set it aside to look around at the good gifts and the blessing that God has given us? We just celebrated a holiday called Thanksgiving, right? Time to slow down and be thankful, or at least that's the point. But it's pretty easy with the busyness of it all, of making a meal, maybe being a host, or traveling different houses, or getting ready for Black Friday shopping, that we might not even stop long enough on the day set aside for Thanksgiving to offer thanks. And I know some people, we have this tradition in our household where during the Thanksgiving meal, you'll kind of go around the table and express something you're thankful for. Maybe you do something like that. Or this is the time of year where kids will bring home crafts from school, like a turkey with feathers on it, and each one lists something they're thankful for. But what a shame it would be if this one time of year is the only time we slow down in our lives to look at the blessings that we have. The book of Job in the Bible is really challenging for a lot of reasons. But it chronicles the life of a man who over the course of time lost everything, and he fell into this very deep despair. And there's a number of people around him who give him some advice. And a lot of that advice is not so great, to be honest, but one of his friends has this advice to give him in the midst of the darkness of his life. Give ear to this. Stand still and show yourself attentive to the wonderful works of God. Be still. Slow it all down. Create some time and some space and some quiet, and give yourself the opportunity to be attentive to the work of God in the world and in our lives. We hear the same message in the book of Psalms when we read, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. We might not intentionally lack gratefulness. We might not intentionally lack thanksgiving. We might not purposely be missing this ingredients. Sometimes we're just not that intentional about how attentive we are. We don't stand still long enough. We're too busy. We're too distracted. We lack attentiveness. So what do you think? Do you have time set aside on a regular basis to look at the amazing blessings God has placed in your life? God is at work in your world and in your life, but we are often so distracted and busy and lacking attentiveness to see it. Maybe you need the regular practice of slowing down. Maybe there's a time first thing in the morning of stillness, of peace, of thankfulness. Or maybe it's at night before you go to sleep. Maybe you set aside some time during lunch. I don't know what time makes the most sense for you, but do you have the regular rhythm of slowing down to be thankful for God? I think another barrier to living a grateful life is when we're forgetful about the blessings and work of God in our lives. We can just be forgetful. Again, this isn't about intent. We're not bad people, but humans are shockingly forgetful. We are a deeply forgetful species. Have you ever heard the term of object permanence before? Right, at about 2 months old, a baby develops the ability to consistently identify faces. At about 3 months old, they can recognize objects like their bottle or pacifier or toy. But it's not until around 8 months old that a baby develops object permanence, which means when they see an object and then the object goes away, they know that object still exists. Before that, when an object goes away, it ceased to exist in their mind. So think about that. For about 6 months, babies can recognize the sight of your face, but when you walk away, you cease existing. Think about how different this makes a game of peekaboo. Have you ever played peekaboo before where you're like, peekaboo? Imagine every time you're covering your face, you cease to exist. Then you reappear back into existence, back and forth. That has got to be an intense experience for a 3-month-old. But I think so many of us, myself included, I think sometimes we suffer almost a lack of spiritual object permanence. When the sun is shining and the things are good and life is easy and the world is all cupcakes and rainbows, it's easy to remember the blessings and the gift of God. But when the clouds roll in and the sun gets covered up, we forget. It is so easy to forget in the darkness those things that we know in the light. And it is in the midst of these moments, the moments when I might be most beneficial to have these strong expressions of gratitude and thankfulness, that we just forget. Why do you think that over and over again when we read the Bible, it reminds us how important it is to remember the works of God? Psalm 77 puts it like this: I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. Or why is it so that in the Old Testament part of the Bible, God is so often referred to as the God of Jacob, or the God of Abraham, or the God who brought us out of Egypt? Or there's times where it's the God who brought you to the promised land, or the God who saves. Because baked into the bread of the Bible and into the way people of the Bible talked about God was a remembrance of the amazing blessings and work of God. It's like life wants to constantly play this game of peekaboo with God. It wants to cover him up, to conceal his love, to conceal his blessings, to conceal the work he has done. And it wants us to forget all those things that God has done when we can't see it. But in each of these statements is a reminder of the great and wonderful work that God has done for the people of Israel. God who called these people out and set them aside. God who used a scoundrel to guide his people. God who freed his people from the power of the world and brought them to a place of safety. God who never disappeared, even when we couldn't see him. I wonder about how we remember God. Do we? I know in our family, there have been times of stress and transition and question marks, whether it's with careers or family. There are things we are worried about and we pray to God for. Yet when I talk about God, I don't normally call him the God who blessed me with children, or the God who guided me in my career, or the God who showed me mercy and healed my hurts. Maybe I should. Maybe we should. Maybe it would be worthwhile to start a bit of a gratitude journal. Just a little bit of time to set aside and reflect and remember the blessings of God. Maybe you write it out as prayers of thankfulness. Maybe it's just a letter to yourself so you don't forget in the darkness what you know in the light. I don't think we intend to live ungrateful lives. Sometimes we're just forgetful. There's one more thing that I think can get in the way of our expressing thankfulness to God. And this one's really challenging. It's when we're deeply self-reliant. This is a tough one in our culture. And for me personally, if I'm being honest, we are told again and again in our world to work harder, to make our own way, to lace up our boots tight and keep on marching. After all, God helps those who help themselves, which of course is not in the Bible. And I'm all about hard work and effort and putting good energy toward worthwhile goals. But how foolish would it have been for the lepers if one of them was healed and they said, man, look how great I did at healing myself. Man, look how well I did at becoming healed. Maybe they start congratulating themselves over the hard work they put into finding Jesus and calling out to him. And Paul, who was a leader of the early church, who did some pretty incredible things, he is a foremost scholar of Jewish laws. He started tons of churches. He had a lot to brag about. And this is what he writes. Not that we are sufficient in ourselves to claim anything as coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God. It's just a reminder of what we read again in the book of James. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Do we believe that? I mean, do I? I wonder how many of those 9 lepers who were healed just sort of thought they did it themselves. Their healing was mostly due to their own efforts. I don't know. But if it's something I earned or I feel I deserve, I'm probably not going to express a lot of thanks for it. And perhaps if thankfulness toward God is something that comes with difficulty in your life, perhaps it's because you see yourself as self-reliant enough that these aren't gifts at all. They're merely something you've earned. Do you have reminders in place that life is a gift? Do you have times when you remind yourself that what you have is a gift from God and that you did not earn it by your own strength? Now, one of the things that can sometimes happen when we miss an important ingredient is we substitute one ingredient for another. I can't tell you how many times when I'm cooking, I'll Google on my phone about a substitute ingredient because I just don't have the one they call for. It's like, I don't know, what substitute for allspice? Or I don't have any cooking sherry. What can I put in instead? Or man, like I don't have any ricotta. Like what can work out? Now, most of the time, it might make the recipe a little bit worse, but it's still okay. But if it's a key ingredient, if it's one of those vital ingredients, well, there's no substitution that's going to work. I actually did this one time in college. I'm a pretty decent cook, but I'm really not that great at baking. And I know it seems like a subtle difference, but it actually matters. And I was living in a little tiny suite at College Park when I went to Maryland, and it had what could generously be called a very small kitchen. And I decided I wanted to make some chocolate chip cookies. And I was pretty sure I had all the ingredients, except it turns out I didn't have one. So what I did is I attempted to replace the missing ingredient with what I thought was a similar amount of butter because, butter tastes good. And so it turns out though, cookies don't work that way. So instead of these nice, delicious cookies, what happened is that the cookies spread out completely over the sheet. So I had this blob of semi-cooked dough that had spread over the entire cookie sheet. The missing ingredient was eggs. Turns out if you don't have eggs, you can't just throw some extra butter in there. Well, when it comes to gratitude, we sometimes make a really bad trade in how we replace it. Because it turns out when gratitude is missing in a person's life, that space doesn't stay vacant. It gets filled with something that is the opposite of gratitude. It tends to get filled by comparison. Man, this is such a difficult dynamic in our world today, but it's always been the case that humans struggle with comparison. And so, if we're going to be serious about adding the ingredient of gratitude to our lives, we need to be deeply aware of and battle against the tendency toward comparison in our lives. We need to be mindful of the ways that we compare ourselves to others. This is such a dangerous thing to cultivate in our lives. Now, let me be clear. This knife can cut both ways, whether I'm comparing myself to make myself feel better, whether I'm comparing myself because I feel like I'm doing better than someone else. As soon as I start looking around at other people's lives and situations, other people's relationships, other people's vacations, other people's hairlines and waistlines and how they line their pockets, comparison steals the ability to express gratitude. Because instead of being mindful of my gifts or my blessings or the areas where I need to be thankful, instead I'm gazing around at someone else's reality. The Bible talks a lot about gifts that God gives people, these spiritual gifts. And we've talked about them here at CCC before. And every time the Bible teaches about spiritual gifts, guess what's the very next thing to be discussed? Unity and avoiding comparison. Every time. God knows that it is a struggle that we take our eyes off of our own gifts and we start looking at the blessings of someone else. This becomes even more complicated because of how easy it is to peek into other people's lives these days. With a single touch on your phone, you can get access to an endless world of comparison. You can see pictures of other people's worlds and lives and relationships, all without actually having to connect with that person. Just this deeply superficial kind of way. I think family photos are a great example of this. How many of you have had family photos done before? Yeah, me too. And we actually have a family photo and it turned out absolutely wonderful. It is a great photo. Now, this photo here looks fantastic, but you do not know how long it took to get this in place. Hours and hundreds of photos. It took a lot of work. And here's what I can promise you. If you see a really nice family photo, you are seeing the work of several long hours and probably a talented Photoshop artist. The truth is, the online world is mostly fake. We are comparing ourselves often to carefully curated lives of what someone decides to present to us, not their whole life, just the bits and the pieces they're choosing to show. And if you find yourself in the department of often comparing yourself to others, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at how often you're putting yourself in a position to peek over into other people's lives. Maybe it's time to take a step away from social media and just ask some honest questions about how much positive impact it's having at your life. Look, I think social media can be a tremendously useful tool. But does social media, the way you're currently using it, make you more or less thankful? Does it make you more or less grateful? Does it make you more or less comparative? If you're honest with your answers, you might be forced that you have to make some choices with how you use your online tools. But it turns out we don't always just compare ourselves to other people. We can also get in the habit of comparing ourselves with what we expect. And when life doesn't work out the way we thought it would, or when our plans don't go the way we hoped, we tend to grumble and complain. There's this newer dynamic to life that we now have access to because we all carry around supercomputers. And it's this idea of life optimization. Have you heard about this, right? Like life optimization. Every aspect of our lives, we're able to work toward it being as optimized as possible. So let's say I go to eat at a restaurant. Well, I can read reviews on the restaurant. I can make sure I go to the best one with the exact menu I want, with the right kind of ambiance I'm looking for, the parking situation that's most convenient, the price point that I'm looking at. I can read reviews and synopsis about shows and movies so I can make sure I'm not watching a single moment of viewing in my world where it's not something I'm already confident I'm going to like. We live in a world, we are constantly of this mindset that everything should be exactly the way I want it to be. And if it's not, then something's gone wrong. I know one area of life optimization we're probably all going to engage with in a little while is shopping. Whether it's Amazon and getting something shipped to your door in 2 hours, or being able to drive up and have someone walk out of the store and put something in your car, or have someone else go pick up some groceries for us. I know during the beginning of the pandemic, our family tried one of those services that goes grocery shopping for you, right? Like they had this ad and it was like a free for your first delivery. I'm like, why not? Let's give it a shot. And so we put our grocery order in, and 2 hours later, a guy pulls up and I was outside when we started carrying the grocery bags in, and he smiles and waves. He says, "You guys must love bananas." Yeah, I guess so. We enjoy bananas. My kids like them. I don't know, no more than most other people. And I'd ordered 20 bananas. We have a family of 5 people. They go pretty fast. And so I sort of shrugged off the comment and I carried the groceries in. But it wasn't until later when I was unpacking the groceries that I realized I didn't get 20 bananas. He had got me 20 bunches of bananas. He had delivered us over 120 bananas. We were eating bananas for days, right? Banana bread, banana muffin, banana pancakes, banana pudding, banana smoothies, banana anything. My wife was taking bags full of bananas to work to give them away, because it turns out when someone gives you 20 bunches of banana, the grocery store doesn't let you return them. And so we are just doing everything we can to eat these bananas up before they go bad. And look, it's kind of funny and it worked out in our favor this time. But what about other times? What about the times when things don't go the way I want? What about the times when they don't go the way they planned? What we tend to do is we tend to grumble. And the Bible has some specific things to say about grumbling, right? Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Do all things without grumbling or questioning. Do not complain or grumble against one another, so that you yourselves may not be judged. We all know what it's like to grumble, don't we? Have you ever been around a 6-year-old when they got a really, really nice gift, but it's not the one she wanted or was hoping for? Have you ever seen someone who has trouble letting go of a hope or a dream to move on to a new hope or dream? Have you ever felt that grumble form in your chest when things aren't going the way you wanted? We have to be very careful, because if we're merely attempting to optimize our lives and to avoid anything we don't want, we might miss out on what we really need. Because it turns out God often does his best work in the midst of lives that are not optimized. God does his best work when things don't go the way we planned, when things don't follow our carefully constructed path, when things are not optimized in the way that we think they should be. And when God works, there is room for amazing things and wonderful gifts and life-changing gratitude. But when it's just me comparing my current life with what I hoped for, or how I thought it was going to be, or how I optimized it to be, well, what I'm left with is a lot of comparison and grumbling, but not much space for gratitude. Do you grumble? I do sometimes, and I have to be really careful because it's impossible to grumble and be grateful at the same time. One last thought, and then we'll get out of here. There's one more caution I hope to give. It's not enough to just feel the emotion of thanks. It needs to be expressed. You see, it's possible for thankfulness to remain an internal experience, the warm fuzzies, which I'm all about, by the way. I love the warm fuzzies. I hope we have tons of warm fuzzies. But if it remains an internal experience, we will always be diminished from what God desires for us. We are called instead to show gratitude and thanksgiving. It is the active expression of our thankfulness. See, over and over again in the Bible, when we read this word for thanks, it's always preceded by a verb. Give thanks, show thanks, express thanks, speaking our thankfulness, singing our gratitude, rejoicing in our thanksgiving. It's active. It's not passive, which means since it's active, it's measurable. After all, it's really difficult to measure how thankful you're feeling. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm feeling thankful number 4. But we can pay attention to and be mindful and even record, if we are so inclined, how thankful we are acting and talking and expressing. It is, in fact, often how we show our thanks to God is by how we treat and show our thankfulness to other people. We read this in Colossians. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the Father through him. So maybe that's the place to put your focus over the next crazy busy month. Are you being attentive and mindful of the blessings of the world? Maybe you need to start a journal and just keep track of how thankful you're being. Keep your eyes remembering these great gifts of God. Maybe you need to set down sometimes to remember the way God has blessed and thank him for the work that he's done in the past. Maybe it's time to celebrate the way God is currently moving in your life, not just by your own power. Maybe you need to pay attention to the role that comparison is playing. Maybe you do need to take a gut check about the role that social media is playing in your world. Maybe you need to start actively and measurably expressing gratitude to God and those around you. Are you speaking thankfully? Are you showing appreciation? Are you adding encouraging words to those around you? Are you praying and singing and speaking words of thankfulness to God? Gratitude and thankfulness is a vital ingredient to a thriving, vibrant life. Let's make sure we don't miss out. You know, every week when we gather together, whether it's in person or online, we celebrate communion. Communion is an opportunity to remember the amazing sacrifice God has made on our behalf to save us. We eat a piece of bread to remember his body given up for us, and we drink some juice to remember the spilling of his blood to pay for our sins. And so we set aside some time and we pull back from the distractions to turn our attention toward God. And this is an amazing time to express our gratitude and thanks to God for all he has done for us. So let's take some time now to celebrate communion together.
My foes are many, they rise against me, but I will hold my ground. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, he will not delay, my refuge and strength always. I will not fear, his promise is true, my God will come through always, always. Trouble surrounds me, chaos abounding. My soul will rest in you. I will not fear the war, I will not fear the storm. My help is on the way, my help is on the way. Oh my God, he will
Now, as we wrap up our time together this week, a couple of things to be fully aware of. First off, don't forget to fill out the CCC card at communitycc.net. If you have a question, if you want to take a step, or if you have a specific prayer request, that's the perfect place. I also want to remind us of the opportunity to give financially in order to be faithful to God with whatever He's entrusted to you. It's a chance to support CCC and our focus of helping people find their way back to God. You can give online. It's a real simple, convenient, safe and secure way to go about giving tithes and offerings. You can also text CCC White Marsh to the number on the screen and continue or begin to give that way. You know, now that we're past Thanksgiving, you know what's coming next. I mean, Christmas is right around the corner, and I want to invite you to celebrate with CCC this year. It might just be the highlight of your holidays. I mean, you can RSVP for one of the in-person Christmas services happening at CCC on the 23rd or the 24th. You can do that through the CCC website. And while you're there, you'll also see something called a Blue Christmas service that's coming up on December 14th. Now, that's a service of remembrance and hope that might be just what you need this Christmas. I mean, if you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, I really think you should check that out. Now, I know we just wrapped Thanksgiving a couple of days ago, and I really hope it was a fantastic time. But you know, sometimes we don't have a great Thanksgiving, and it's important to be able to discern. So I actually have the top 10 signs you had a bad Thanksgiving. Got it right here. Top 10 signs you had a bad Thanksgiving. This is how we're going to go out today. Ready? Here we go. Number 10, it was at Waffle House. It's a bad sign. Number 9, your Thanksgiving celebration made the evening news. Number 8, your pumpkin pie was made from your Halloween jack-o'-lantern. Number 7, every time you pierced the turkey with your knife, it gobbled. Number 6, thanks to a new electric knife, the kids fought over the wishbone, your severed thumb. Number 5, your reenactment of the first Thanksgiving went great until everyone came down with smallpox. Number 4, you're 33 and still sitting at the kiddie table. Number 3, Uncle Larry shows up wearing pregnancy pants, which he calls his Thanksgiving jeans. Number 2, you wake up from a tryptophan-induced sleep to find yourself naked in the driveway again. And the number 1 sign you had a bad Thanksgiving, one word, tofurkey. Well, there you go, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.